Hello, welcome to part 3 of a 3-part tutorial series on how to write a philosophy essay. In this part, I will provide you with a detailed 6-step guide to writing a philosophy essay. Before those 6 steps, I will start with a short introductory lesson to try to remind you what philosophy is about. Watching part 3 does not require having watched part 1 or 2. Part 3 provides some of the information from those parts, but in a different style. It is the most technical part in this series and is primarily for students who have already written 1 or 2 philosophy essays. Before you begin, you might want to have your pen and paper or electronic notepads handy. And I'll remind you that you can watch the following lessons independently from one another or in any order you wish to watch them. But be mindful that each lesson assumes that you have either watched the previous ones or have sufficient knowledge of the area. This introductory lesson will lay the groundwork for the step-by-step guide to writing a philosophy essay by reminding you what philosophy is about. What is philosophy? There are so many thoughtful and beautiful ways to answer that question. I will offer you one of the answers that is most useful, particularly for the question of writing a philosophy essay. But before that, let us begin by agreeing that there are so many things in life that we just do not question. That's where philosophy comes in. In Louis Vaughn's words, philosophy examines beliefs of the most fundamental kind, beliefs that structure our lives and underpin all academic disciplines. Can you think of some beliefs you or your friends haven't questioned yet? How about this? Nature must be preserved. How many of you have asked whether that is true or not? Or how about wrongdoing must be punished? I'll bet most of you assume that what I just said is correct. Perhaps it is, but why? For what reason? Well, what are your reasons? Think about it for a minute. What philosophy does is ask us to think whether our reasons for holding those beliefs are good reasons. In other words, ask us whether those beliefs are worth believing. Philosophy asks for our justifications, or to repeat the magic word, our reasons. Now, I have to tell you something very important. You must not confuse reasons with whatever it is that caused you to have those reasons. Let us say you believe something because all your friends believe it, or your great-grandmother told you so in a dream, or your professor stated it in class. Does that sound like your reason for believing that thing? Or the cause of your believing that thing, in the same way that too much time in the sun can be the cause of your headache? As an aside, let me emphasize that the cause of a belief is a scientific question. It is of interest to psychologists and anthropologists, not typically philosophers, except for philosophers working in a very specialized field that you will learn about if you stay in philosophy. There is a very interesting relation between beliefs, reasons, and causes as well. A reason can be a cause of your belief when you have that belief because of that reason. but cause and reason are still two different things. It's okay if you found the explanation confusing. You don't need to remember it. Only remember not to confuse reasons and causes. Here we are interested in reasons. We are interested in the fact that generally, when people make a statement of belief, when they make a claim, in other words, they often give their reasons for it. And if they don't, you will usually ask them for it. So you might believe the same thing your friends or your professor believes because you accept the reasons they gave you, and not just because they said so. If you read a new claim and the claim does not give reasons, you have a right, sometimes even an obligation, to question that claim. You will know from taking science classes that no scientific claim is acceptable unless it can provide evidence for its truth. Scientific evidence is the kind of reason scientists use. Everything I've said so far amounts to the following. In philosophy, what matters are reasons. Let's move on with a more specific example. This is a very easy one, but I chose it because I want to be very clear. The philosopher Aristotle wrote, "Socrates is mortal." Actually, we don't have Aristotle's writings, only the notes taken by his students. But for exercise sake, let us imagine Aristotle wrote, "Socrates is mortal." For those of you who don't know, Socrates is a philosopher. He was one of Aristotle's teachers, and he died at 399 BC. I shall assume that you also think Socrates is mortal. Why do you assume that, however? What is your reason for thinking or believing that Socrates is mortal? Why is it true that Socrates is mortal? Is this your reason? I hope not, because that is a bad reason. It would also be a bad reason to say that force is equal to mass times acceleration because Newton said so. That is not how reasons work. Let us find a good reason for Socrates being mortal. Here it is. Socrates is human and all humans are mortal. That is the reason that we can say with certainty that Socrates is mortal. This is a good reason. Anyone reading this statement will immediately accept it as the reason for Socrates being mortal. They will accept it regardless of who said it. In order to be clear about reasons, I use a simple example. But when it comes to the search for reasons underlying either unquestioned or cherished beliefs, such as wrongdoers must be punished or the environment must be preserved, the task may seem daunting. And that is why philosophy seems impossibly difficult to many who haven't encountered it. But do not worry. When you write a philosophy essay, you will be starting with the reasons other philosophers are already given for the claim. For example, for the question of whether the mind is material or immaterial, or whether knowledge comes only from the senses or not only from the senses, or whether morality is relative to a culture or is based on universal principles, or whether the environment must be preserved, and so on. Now that I can assume we are on the same page regarding what philosophy does, in each of the next 6 lessons, I will introduce one of the 6 steps of writing a philosophy essay.